On this episode of This Week in Space, we're talking to Jose Hernandez, former NASA astronaut and the subject of the great new biopic on Amazon Prime, A Million Miles Away. Stay with us.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 84, recorded on October 20th, 2023, Hometown Hero. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Bitwarden. Get the open source password manager that can help you stay safe online. You can get started with a free Teams or Enterprise plan trial, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the Hometown Hero Edition. Today, Tariq and I are thrilled to have Jose Hernandez join us. Yay! If you've seen the film A Million Miles Away, you know part of Jose's story, and it's quite an incredible story. Former NASA astronaut, space entrepreneur, and the most hardworking, tenacious, and perhaps stubborn guy I think we might talk to in a long time. And you'll see if you see the film. And we've met a lot of overachievers here, so this is going to be an impressive, fun day. So, Jose, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Rod. Happy to be here with you and Tariq, and just ecstatic to be able to talk to you guys. Heard so much about you guys, so now I'm here with you, so it's great.
Uh-oh, now I'm worried, Tariq. if he's hearing about us, this may be NASA putting out the smash on us. Well, okay, but before we start, what we're really known for is our space joke. So here's my latest space dad joke from listener, former guest, and NSS big shot Jonathan Daigle. Hey, Tariq, what happened to the angry astronauts when their moon lander overshot the landing zone?
I don't know, Rod. What did happen?
They had a bit of a dust up. Okay.
I got it. It took me a while.
Delayed and sincere laughter is better than none at all. And as he wrote after that, and yes, I invented that one. I should have been in comedy. Jonathan, don't quit your day job. As always, we invite you to send space jokes. You know, we get plenty of fan mail, Tariq,
yes,
but only about a tenth of them send us a space joke. I have to continually shake the tree for that. So please do so while you're also giving us a thumbs up on your favorite podcaster or your favorite podcatcher, I should say. All right. So let's get through some headlines here and we get down to business. So SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic executives urge senators to improve the FAA.
Yeah, so I have to start off with, Rod, it's been an interesting week because I actually took this whole week off from work.
Yeah.
So I had to actually go back and actually see what was happening this week. And this was an interesting one because
this is from space.com, I assume.
Yeah. Well, no, this is actually from CNBC, but Space News had a version of it as well. And the Senate Subcommittee on Space and Science had a hearing this week from SpaceX, from Blue Origin, from Virgin Galactic, basically the players that need all of like the FAA's help in clearing their vehicles for commercial space flights. And we've talked in the past about how SpaceX has kind of been pushing a lot the FAA to try to get approvals through the door so that they can launch Starship and do their tests and everything. And this is kind of like a team up from these three major companies saying that the FAA doesn't have enough resources to meet their needs to get stuff done on a timely basis. In fact, Bill Gerstenmaier, who you'll remember, was a NASA spaceflight chief for many, many, many years. Now he's at SpaceX as a VP, and he said, and I quote, that the FAA needs at least twice the resources they now have in order to license rocket launches. This comes after the FAA and the Department of Commerce worked to try to streamline launch licensing and whatnot. So it's a very interesting kind of turn of development where it seems like the end users, like the Blue Origin for their New Shepard, like SpaceX for their Starship, not so much for Falcon 9, but they do have kind of like a cadence going there. They're at like 60 some launches for the year. I mean, dwarfing their previous record.
It's closer to 70. Yeah.
Yeah, I've lost track. That's how many there are a week from SpaceX, and then Virgin Galactic, who has been launching monthly commercial space flights of their Unity spacecraft. And so I think that this is like a sea change, right? This is kind of like the Uniteds and Deltas clamoring to say we need to have some extra support to get our flights through, but for space. And so it'll be interesting to see how this was. And it's also interesting that the FAA was not invited to testify to the Senate in this hearing to say, hey, this is what they're saying. But because I do believe that the FAA has done some work to expand at least some local offices in South Texas for SpaceX in particular to help address that problem. But it'll be interesting to see what report comes out of this committee, any actions that the FAA gets, any other kinds of things. But when it comes to budgeting, there isn't a lot that can be done right now because the House of Representatives is kind of all locked up in their in their leader fight. We're not going to hear any developments for that for funding for the future.
Yeah, I think Tariq, the strategy the FAA should take should be a two-pronged approach. Is try to satisfy the needs of the commercial industry where there's no humans involved in spaceflight, because that's a different animal than the one when you start involving humans to fly on the vehicles. And my concern is that because there's perhaps not that differentiation when they go through that approval process, that it gets bogged down when unnecessarily if it's an uncrewed space flight. And so if they separate them and then deal with them in a different level of attention, then I think things could improve a little faster.
Yeah, that's spot on. What I think kind of, Jose, just as you said, the FAA has an Office of Commercial Spaceflight, but there isn't an Office of Commercial Crew Spaceflight or uncrewed or expendable or anything like that. So It'll be interesting to see, Jose, if they take you up on that, so.
Well, as long as we're discussing this, it's been interesting to watch the FCC sort of try and scrape out their bit of turf. And that's a little bit of a head scratcher to me. If it's a satellite, a comm satellite, or something using bandwidth, of course that makes sense because they regulate that. But it seems like there's been a little bit of pressure and some motion towards trying to get a little more authority than that, which doesn't make sense to me.
So, well, for the FCC, it is a totally different kind of animal there too. You're looking at orbital slots as well as bandwidth slots, and so that's the whole other regulation hurdle, I believe.
And it's not just them, right? It's the International Telegraph Union that you have to go through that whole process, and there's only so many slots. And this is only for, my understanding is that's only for geosynchronous satellites. I think all bets are off when it's when it's low Earth orbit satellites that are continuously moving along, which is a different animal in itself.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next story because we want to spend most of our time talking to Jose. So, Tariq, which one do you want to do?
I think let's do this really nice James Webb Space Telescope discovery on Jupiter that we've got. This was the one that really caught my eye from the science side this week. And basically, the James Webb Space Telescope has spotted a jet stream on Jupiter. This is from space.com. My colleague Monisha Ravisetti wrote it. But they spotted this jet stream on Jupiter that is stronger than a Category 5 hurricane on Earth, which is just crazy. I mean, Jupiter obviously is like a ginormous planet, and so its storms are they dwarf, or they outshine. They make us small, I think is what I'm trying to say. I mean, the Great Red Spot, right, is like the size of a couple of Earths alone.
Oh, much, yeah.
And so the James Webb, not really built to look at the planets in our solar system, but it can. And they basically have used its near infrared camera to look at the clouds, and they found this jet stream that is blowing, stronger than a Category 5. In fact, they say that the high speed jet stream on the planet is traveling at more than 3,000 miles an hour. So that's 4,800 kilometers. It's 3,000 miles wide, and it's traveling at 320 miles per hour. Well, that's an order of magnitude off, but I want to make sure I got that right. So 320 miles per hour, 515 kilometers per hour, and it's something they've never seen before. And they actually said, quote, "This totally surprised us," and they're trying to figure out what it means about understanding Jupiter. And the photo alone, the near infrared, is just gorgeous too. So you've got this weird jet stream on Jupiter. You've got this stunning new photo of the planet from James Webb, which just never seems to disappoint. And I'm just very happy to see that they're looking at all of the other planets in our solar system for it.
So Tariq,
it puts a new meaning to headwind, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
It does.
I'm no pilot, Jose. I mean, I would hate to have to be the one that has to fly through that, right?
So Tariq, while you and I were discussing on the back deck of my boat last week all the reasons we didn't manage to become astronauts when we grew up, I think one of them is probably errors that are orders of magnitude off. When you're in space, that can be unfortunate. And I think back to Buzz Aldrin using a sextant and a pencil and a piece of paper to navigate his Gemini capsule over to the Agena by hand. And if it were you and I, we would have ended up on Jupiter probably, which would have been unusual for Gemini. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back and we'll talk to Jose. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Bitwarden, the only open source cross-platform password manager anywhere, anytime. In fact, Security Now's Steve Gibson has even switched over, and that's saying a lot. With Bitwarden, all the data in your vault is end-to-end encrypted, not just your passwords. In the summer of 2023 G2 Enterprise Grid Report, they solidified their position as the highest performing password manager for the enterprise, leaving competitors in the dust. Bitwarden protects your data and privacy by adding strong, randomly generated passwords for each account. You can go further with the username generator and create unique usernames for each account or use any of the 6 integrated email alias services. You can also log into Bitwarden and decrypt your vault after using SSO on a registered trusted device. No master password is needed. This new solution makes it even easier for enterprise users to stay safe and secure with Bitwarden. And you can transparently view all of Bitwarden's code available on GitHub. On top of being public to the world, Bitwarden also has professional third-party audits performed yearly, and the results get published on their website. Bitwarden is open source security you can trust. Share private data securely with coworkers across departments or the entire company with fully customizable and adaptive plans. Bitwarden's Teams Organization option is $3 per month per user, while their Enterprise Organization plan is just $5 per month per user. And individuals always get Bitwarden's basic free account for unlimited passwords. You can upgrade anytime to a premium account for less than $1 per month, or bring the whole family with their Family Organization option to give up to 6 users premium features for only $3.33 a month. This Cybersecurity Awareness Month, keep yourself and help your friends and family stay secure online with Bitwarden. Bitwarden offers a fully featured free plan for everyone, which now includes being able to use hardware security keys or passkeys as a form of two-factor authentication. Bitwarden envisions a world where nobody is hacked. Wouldn't that be nice? And is the only major password manager offering the strong security option for free. And I came over to Bitwarden. I agree with all these things, and I'm paying for it, and I love it. You know, at TWiT, we're fans of password managers. You can get started with Bitwarden's free trial or a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. All righty. Let's move on to the fun stuff.
That's Jose? Right. We have an astronaut here.
With an astronaut. The astronaut. What are you talking about?
We should really, Jose, just kind of point out to everyone that you are near and dear to my heart in terms of the astronauts that I've written about or met in person, because we are from the same hometown.
Oh,
from
thank
Stockton.
God you didn't mention band again. I thought we were going to hear about band.
No, Stockton, California.
Stockton's cool.
Franklin High School. We both were alumni from there. I heard you were there just before we started recording. You said you were there
yesterday
earlier. So well, I'm so excited to welcome you. And I should probably say my mother says hello as well.
Yes, please say hello to her. I met her at a restaurant, and she came up to me and she says, "You know, I'm Tariq's mother." Oh, I know him. He writes a lot about space. I didn't realize you were from Stockton, Tariq. Yeah. You know, we had talked a few times, and I didn't realize you were from Stockton. It wasn't until your mother told, and then of course we started talking more, and the rest is history, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why this is such a special treat to be able to for you to have some time to join us on the show. So welcome. And I guess just to start out with, for the folks who don't know, if you can just give us like a short bio or like an introduction of who you are and where you are right now.
Sure. Well, I come from a migrant farm working family. My parents are from Mexico, but I was born here because I was born during the summer months, harvest months. And as I grew up, we went up and down to California 9 months following the harvest, starting in Southern California, 2 months, 2 months in Central California, 5 months in Stockton, and then we would go to my parents' hometown in Michoacan, Mexico, for 3 months and self-study. And it wasn't until my second grade teacher, Miss Young, convinced my parents that we needed to stay in one place. We made Stockton our home. And then as a fifth grader, I was 10 years old, I saw the very last Apollo mission on TV, Apollo 17. And it was none other than Gene Cernan walking on the surface of the moon. And I would go outside. It was a cold December early evening, come back inside and see him and listen to the reporter. Still remember his name, Walter Cronkite, narrating that moonwalk. And I was hooked. I said, this is what I want to be. As a 10-year-old, I already knew I wanted to be an astronaut. And my dad gave me a simple recipe that day when I told him. He did two important things. First, he validated the dream. He didn't squish it. He actually nourished it and said, I think that's a great idea. And I remind you, this comes from a man who only has a third grade education, but he had the wisdom to sit me down and said, follow these 5 simple steps, son. Determine your purpose in life, recognize how far you are, draw yourself a roadmap, and then prepare yourself according to the challenge, and never, ever give up. Develop a work ethic second to none. And of course, the sixth one is that never give up, the perseverance that I add to my recipe. And I put that to work. And after 11 rejections, that 12th time was the charm. That's when I finally got selected into the 19th class of astronauts, flew on Space Shuttle Discovery, and then they retired the Space Shuttle fleet. So I came back home to raise my family. And now, can't come full circle. They say you could take a kid out of the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the kid, because now I have a vineyard, still pick grapes. They're my grapes. And I didn't stop there. I make my own wine under the label Tierra Luna Cellars. And it's a wine that tastes out of this world.
So I love this story, and a part of it that I love, and you were probably about the same age when you saw Apollo 17 as I was when I saw Apollo 11. And of course, I had the same reaction. And when Tariq finally came around 20 years later and watched the space shuttle flights, he had the same reaction. The big difference is, of course, you went out and became an astronaut against all odds. And I just want to remind people that this story is told capably and beautifully in the movie A Million Miles Away, which is now streaming on Amazon Prime. I watched it last night. Yes, I got dirt in my eye and got a little misty-eyed. But I thought one of the things that was remarkable, besides just being a well-made, top-shelf movie, one of the things I found really remarkable is, and because you just mentioned this, they chronicle your origins. And that origin story could have easily become overly sentimental, or it could have been tinged with frustration and anger. It could have been a lot of things, but what it felt like to me was it was played very sincerely, very straight up. We really got a sense of where you came from and what your family went through. And, for most people watching this, they've never had an experience like that. I mean, I had a lot of crummy manual labor jobs when I was a kid, but nothing like that. And when I drive up and down Central California and I see people working in the fields, you're really reminded of how tough that work is. I mean, that is not an easy way to grow up or to live as an adult, because you're bending over for hours and hours and hours. And that is not an easy part of the country to work in. It's hot, it's dusty, it's pretty brutal work. So I thought all those things taken into consideration, I thought the portrayal of that in your family life was really handled with great delicacy and love.
Yeah. And it was tough, Rod, but when you grow up under those conditions, that's the only thing you know. You don't know any better. You think, okay, this is the way everybody is. It's not until after you grow up and you reflect back and you wonder, how in the heck did I make it out of there?
Yeah.
And then that's when you realize how important family structure is, how important education is, how important goal setting is for yourselves, and all those type of things that you need to sort of climb out of the hole you find yourself in.
Education is like a through line, it seems, of your life. You mentioned earlier, and it's shown in the in both your biography, Reaching for the Stars, and the film itself, about your teacher convincing your parents to stay. You went to the University of Pacific, which is in Stockton again. Yay!
Yes, and I had him wear the T-shirt so we could.
You did? I saw that.
And you studied electrical engineering there, and I was curious. I mean, it seems like that early life in Stockton and with your family really shaped like all the tenets that you followed that led you to become an astronaut there. But what drew you to electrical engineering in terms, like specifically, to make that kind of like the first foray into academic life, into your career at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and then beyond to NASA?
Well, that's a good question, Tariq. I'm kind of like a pragmatic person. I knew I wanted to be an astronaut, but I also knew there wasn't a major in college for astronaut. Mm-hmm. And now there's other majors like astronomy, astrophysicist, and those type of things. But again, I'm pragmatic. I said, okay, if things don't work out in me not being an astronaut, what am I going to work in? Mm-hmm. I got to have a job. And of course, Silicon Valley is not far away from us, Tariq, right? And so I said, what do Silicon Valley hire the most? It's engineers. And quite frankly, the reason why I became an electrical engineer is because my oldest brother is an electrical engineer. Okay, I'll out of all the engineering, I'll just pick electrical because my brother is finishing up his degree in that. So what's good enough for him is good enough for me, and I'll have a job. And so that's why I picked engineering, because I figure if everything falls by the wayside, I'm going to have a job as an engineer somewhere in Silicon Valley.
And then that's so. Go ahead, Rod. Go.
Just pursue it to Livermore, and I hope this isn't a spoiler. I'll try and take it easy, but there's a scene there where you show up for work, and the secretary, the receptionist, starts saying, "Oh, the janitorial supplies are over there. He's the key ring," and so forth. And I hung around Livermore a little bit as a kid because my uncle worked there, but that was in the '60s. And that scene would have made more sense to me in the 60s, but as late as that was, because that was what, early 80s probably?
Yeah, it was like 80 after I finished Pacific, 85.
And that was pretty straight up the way it was played?
Yeah. No,
that's so weird.
Well, it's not if you think about it. If you think about it, Rod, that same day, in those days, buildings had building operators. And the phone would ring into the building and they would say, John Smith, line 31. And so you would pick up your phone, put 31, and you answer the phone. So that's how the operator handled it. And that day, 2 people were starting in that building. One was a Jose Hernandez, and the other one was a Jack Smith, for lack of a better name. And all she knew was that one was an engineer and the other one was a custodian. So, she basically just acted on her biases and said, well, Jose Hernandez must be the custodian and Jack Smith must be the engineer. And so when I introduced myself as a new guy and she saw me Hispanic, okay, here's the custodian, here's the keys and everything. And I said, whoa, okay.
Oh, wow.
But again, as that scene was portrayed, and I don't want to get too hung up in the film, but again, a really delicate balance of you being surprised but not angry, Michael Pena as you, and her just being kind of wide-eyed and not really somebody you'd blame for it, as you just explained. It made sense. But it was kind of a moment there. I thought, wow, even then. And then, of course, a few scenes later, and again, Tariq, I'll try not to give away too many spoilers, but our young hero discovers a major flaw in the Strategic Defense Initiative XRay Laser, and that must have been an incredible moment. And again, was that portrayed pretty much as you experienced it? Because
Yeah,
Your characters does sort of an aw shucks, I just happened to notice it because I'm brilliant thing there.
Yeah, it wasn't that particular thing they described, but it was very similar. And I didn't want to get into it because of classification issues. So I let them invent their own. I said, look, this is what I did and all this, but this is the part I don't want to talk about. So you guys need to fill in the blanks. And so they kind of stretched it a bit and came up with something that looked halfway reasonable. But getting back to your point about not getting mad at people, Rod, I subscribe to something my mom had told me as a very young kid. The first time I felt discrimination, I went home and complained to her. I was in elementary school, and she didn't console me or say, hey, basically she said, son, you're going to have to deal with this. And the only way to deal with this, she said, is you have to kill him with love. And I said, kill him with love? What do you mean, Mom? And she said, yeah, mijo. It says, show him who you are inside here, pointing to my heart. So show them who you are inside here. Sooner or later, you're going to win over the people that are fair. The good people, you're going to win them over, and you'll be good friends with them. There's going to be some people you're never going to win over. Those are the ones you stay away from. And so that's what has been my mantra all along, is that, I don't judge people because they judge me by appearance. I give them a chance to get to know me. And then once they know me, they say, okay, well, Jose's a good guy and all that. And I get acceptance. So I give them that chance of trying to gain their acceptance. And then we move forward with that. And that's what you have to do. And it's worked for me beautifully ever since my mom told me that. And so it's not putting a chip on your shoulder and saying, poor me, or it's because I'm Hispanic or this. No, it's like, okay, fair enough. You made that mistake, but let me show you who I am and all that. And then you gain their respect.
Your parents sound like incredible people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good advice. Good advice. So you were at Lawrence Livermore for about, was it 14 years, right? 87?
16 years almost, 16 years, yeah.
Wow. So this is another reason to be a bad astronaut. I cannot add.
I was there yesterday because ironically enough, I'm on, the governor appointed me to the UC Board of Regents, and the Regents appointed me to the Lawrence Livermore Lab Board of Governors. So I kind of oversee them now, which is pretty ironic. So I was there yesterday for all-day meetings.
Wow. And we just saw your UC Santa Barbara mug.
I prominently displayed my UCSB.
You've got your Master's of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering from there as well. And then you joined NASA, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. In 2001 at the Johnson Space Center, but not as an astronaut, right? And what was that path like? Because family. You mentioned your parents. And I know that you and your wife, Adela, have 5 kids. That's a move, right? To go to the Johnson Space Center. Before, was that just part of your path of kind of pursuing the dream there, or did an opportunity arise that you learned of to move halfway across the country?
No, what happened was I got an opportunity when I was working in the nuclear non-proliferation arena at the lab in Livermore to go and help DOE headquarters, because they were working on a new program called plutonium disposition with the Russians. And they said, hey, you already have experience working with the Russians, going to Russia, go to DOE headquarters for a detailed assignment, a 2-year assignment. And I was smart enough to realize that anyone who's anybody at the lab has to punch their ticket through DOE headquarters, because that's our funding arm. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. But at the same time, I was on the short list of being selected an astronaut. I was in the 100 finalists. And at the same time that I had just moved to DOE to Washington, D.C. in Maryland to be a SAC with my family. I had 4 kids at the time. I had just moved over there. NASA comes back and offers me a consolation prize when I did not get selected. They said, would you work as an engineer at Johnson Space Center. We'll offer you a job, and this way you could get more experience and perhaps no promises, but perhaps you put yourself in a better position to get selected. We like you, but we don't know you is basically the answer.
Yeah.
And I had to turn them down.
Oh, wow.
Because I did because I was about 2 weeks moved in. The lab had spent about $30,000 moving me to Washington, D.C. I couldn't in good conscience tell the lab, hey, thanks a lot, but you know what? I got this offer.
Yeah.
So I politely turned down NASA, but I explained why. And then 2 years later, they have the next selection round. I'm in the 100 again, and I don't get selected.
Mm-hmm.
Now they tell me, you still have this job offer, Jose. And because I was coming home to California, I thought, okay, I'm going to move anyway. Why don't I just move to Johnson Space Center to Houston? And but the problem is NASA offered me the job. And here's the balance, right? You got the perfect weather of California, hot, muggy Houston. You got a 15% pay cut. So explain that to your wife. Say, hey, honey, how would you like to come to hot, humid Houston and have less money to spend? So I had that conversation with my wife, but she was very supportive, and so we came to NASA, and I worked 4 years there. I started off as just a staff engineer, worked my way up to materials and process branch chief, and after 4 years, got another interview, and that's when I got selected.
Yeah, that story, that kind of that early introduction at NASA Johnson before you became an astronaut, that's missing from the film itself.
Yes,
Was that a conscious choice, or is it just to streamline the story itself, do you think?
It's a conscious choice to streamline the story,
right,
to shorten the story. There's also a very important part, 1/3 of my career, that is not told from the lab.
Yeah.
And that is the development of the first full-field digital mammography system for the earlier detection of breast cancer. We're the ones that ushered in medical imaging, computer-aided diagnosis, and we developed the first full-field digital mammography system that demonstrates more information content, which means earlier detection, which means saving hundreds of thousands of lives. And that's what I'm most proud of. When people ask me what's my proudest technical moment or achievement, it's not being an astronaut, it's not going to space. It's actually being one of two co-inventors of that full-field digital mammography system, which is not even in the movie, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I saw it on your bio. Well, speaking of doing jobs, my job is to take us to one more quick ad break, and we'll be right back after this short message from a sponsor. So I've already mentioned tenacity. I think that's a wonderful word to describe you. And the story of your many applications to NASA reminds me a little bit of my lovely ex-wife, who's a classical musician in the LA Philharmonic, who took 20 professional auditions before she got that gig. And, most people by the time they graduate at the music academy or whatever are at such a level where they take a handful and they either get a job or they give up. She took 20, which is, I think, kind of unheard of. And it made me think of her when I was watching the film. That moment, it must have been a bit challenging for you to coach them on how to tell the story, not just of all the applications and the incredible dedication you had, but especially of number 12, because that, of course, is one of those major turning points in a movie, and we're all really rooting for you. And then it comes across. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, people always tell me, hey, you must have felt, like you won the lottery when you finally got selected. And I tell them it's quite the opposite. I said, to me, it was about frickin' time. I felt I was ready years ago. And it was only until then that I finally got selected. And so to me, having been there at NASA for those 4 years and having had all the preparation I did, I felt ready. I said, hey, it's about time, man. Let's go. And when the call finally came, I said, finally, I'm in. Now, of course, I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. but it wasn't like I was getting something I didn't deserve.
Right.
It was about time you guys give me this, because man, I earned it years ago.
Well, and do you think, sorry, Tariq, I just have one follow-up. Do you think, and this is kind of, again, how the film plays it, that personal visit to JSC made all the difference, or did it just happen to work out that way?
I think that personal visit actually occurred when I went to DC for the first time. I went, and I think that personal visit got me that job offer, the consolation prize. And then the second consolation prize job offer. And then during those 4 years, what they don't show there is that during those 4 years, that's when we had the Columbia accident.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was my group, because my group runs the failure analysis portion of materials, because we're materials and processes branch. And my group was the one that was out there picking up pieces. My group was the one that was doing the SCM analysis, all the analysis to help the presidential appointed panel, Columbia Accident Investigation Board, that we presented to. And ironically, I think that's what helped me get selected, because I was in front of the board, an engineering board, presenting results from my group that my group did. I had a group of about 40 engineers and technicians. And so when that 12th time came and I interviewed with them, I knew about 90% of the people on the interview panel. Whereas when I was in Livermore, I knew 0% of them. And so now they knew me because they've worked with me. They've had 4 years to see me and all that. And then that's when I finally got in, and I got.
And that's what I found really compelling, just kind of reviewing your bio and seeing, professionally, the overlap with when I was covering the space program too, during, all of that. But you joined as an engineer in 2001, and then you're selected as an astronaut in 2004. So that class that is selected after the accident, the same year, 04, that the administration announces they're going to retire the program eventually and replace it. And then you went through that whole experience as a member of the NASA family. The Columbia accident, we had, tragically lost seven astronauts. Kalpana Chawla mentioned in the film as well there too as one of them, and you've also mentioned your family support overall. And I guess the question I'm trying to get to, Jose, is what did that mean to you to kind of see not just the promise of realizing that dream, of becoming an astronaut, of flying in space, but also the severe risks that are there all the time, and then having to explain that to your family, to Adela, to your kids, while you're investigating all of that, and why it's still a dream to pursue, I guess.
Well, first of all, the first demons you have to conquer are the demons inside of you, right? Because, it hits home. Believe me, it hits home when you're picking up pieces of the shuttle in North Texas and Louisiana. It hits home. When you know that your mentor, Kalpana, it's somewhere along that debris, yeah, it hits home. And but I'll tell you, having worked at NASA those 3 years before being selected by NASA showed me the dedication that people at NASA have for the program. Those people at NASA, they could be working at any other company and be earning 30 to 50% more salary. But they're there because they love their job. They love their work. They're dedicated. I saw firsthand of my 40 folks that when I was branch chief, how we tirelessly and relentlessly worked when it was time to try and find the root cause of the accident. Designing the wing with the wing leading edge RCC in San Antonio, Southwest Research Center, and firing that air gun. That was all us engineering that we did. And so we were doing all these. So I saw the dedication. So when it was my turn to get on the ship, I was at peace because I said, everybody's dedicated and they're doing their best to make this the safest flight possible. And so that's why I was at ease. Now, it's a different story with my wife because of the fact that she stays behind and she's got 5 kids she has to raise if I don't make it back. And I understood her position, and it was tough. It wasn't easy on her. You'll see it in the movie. It was a lot of hand wringing on her part because that's the reality of a wife or a spouse that is watching their loved one get up on this controlled bomb explosion, if you will, to get up into space. Space right now, space is still not trivial. It's a dangerous activity. And you guys talked about earlier about the FAA and all the things that are happening. I'll tell you, all we need is one commercial accident with loss of life to bring things to a grinding halt, which will happen eventually because space flight is not guaranteed and we will have an accident. And when that happens, there's going to be a closer look at how the commercial industry does safety compared to NASA. This is why it's faster, cheaper to do in the commercial end, and it's because they're not subjected to what NASA subjects itself to. Mm-hmm. But eventually that's going to happen too, and they're going to be as expensive. But at least that's my theory in that.
You use the words faster, cheaper, and I would add better. It always kind of causes a moment of having hives after that whole period of time.
Notice how I didn't say better.
Well, and as any engineer will tell you, it's a pick any two. I wanted to mention family and family support, in watching the film and learning more about your story. As a parent, I mean, we're all kids of somebody, so we have that to reflect on. But of course, as a parent, I'm thinking about, did I give my kids enough support? And was I that good and all that? And then it dawns on me, of course, like a dummy. It's like, look, I was raising my kid from a position of great privilege. I had it easy in comparison to you and a lot of people. So the way that your parents sort of supported you and put you out there in front against all odds, it's another one of those moments that makes you a little dewy-eyed, especially if you've been a parent, I think. Can you talk a little bit about what that meant?
Yeah, I think the important part is that, they set the environment that was conducive for us to get an education. I mean, we didn't have much resources. My parents could not contribute to my tuition at University of the Pacific.
Right.
But I still lived with them because I wanted to save money and not incur costs in the dorms and the cafeteria. So yeah, I took my burritos to school and ate my lunch. I like that. But the thing is, my parents from a young age, instilled upon us that we needed to go to college. That was not a decision of ours, but it was a requirement from them that we would go to college. My mom, every day after school, since we were in elementary school, would fix us a snack. We would circle around the kitchen table. We would eat, and she would not allow us to get up until we cracked open our books and finished our homework. So she instilled those study habits early in our age that helped us during high school and college. And so it's those type of activities. That's why I always tell people, when parents tell me, hey, I don't know my kids, I can't afford college for them and this and that, I said, don't worry about that right now. What you have to worry about right now is making sure you set up an environment where they're going to be successful at home, in their elementary school, in their junior high, in their high school. If they get good grades, the rest takes care of themselves, because you could get scholarships, you could get loans, you can get work study, and all these things will essentially help pay for the tuition, the cost of an education. But if you give them the expectation that you can't afford college, so don't even try, then of course they're not going to be prepared. There's not going to be any scholarships. They probably won't qualify for a 4-year university and those type. So you set them up for failure by taking that pessimistic view or attitude. And that's why I tell people, don't worry. Tuition they're not billing you right now. Your kid's only in the 8th grade. I said, start saving a little, but the more important thing is, what are you doing with your kid to ensure he or she's going to be successful all the way through high school and get good grades and be an honor student? That's what you got to worry about.
That hits hard. My daughter is in high school right now, and we're thinking all about that. We just went to our first college intro night. Yes,
oh yeah, that's fun though. You go to the college campuses and visit them. That's fun with the kids.
They would go to college campuses and remember how much fun it was to be there. I went to 7 myself, but that's a story for another time, because right now we're going to take another break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
So I wanted to ask, because we talked about your youth, your path to becoming an astronaut, that road that led to your space flight, but we haven't talked about the flight itself, and was it all worth it? Which I assume that it was, but for all of I can't even explain it to myself for whatever. I think maybe my daughter was 9 months old, and that's why I did not actually get to see you launch in person. In 2000, and I think that was 9, right? 2009, STS-128 launched.
August 28th.
Yeah, I found the story that I wrote about it, and it hasn't aged well on the internet because of how those things change. But it said here that you had you held up a sign for your family and said that you loved them, which must have struck me because I put it in the story that much. But can you tell us a little bit about finally kind of getting there? You wake up in the morning, you suit up, you take the Astrovan out to the launch pad, and then the next thing you know, you're in space.
It wasn't that easy. It wasn't that easy because we suited up the first time, and we got into the vehicle, and then I started seeing some flashes out the window. I'm the flight engineer, so I get the best seat in the house. I sit a little behind the commander and the pilot, so I get the nice panoramic view. And I remember I was sitting there. We're getting ready to launch, doing all the sequences that we need to do on the flight data files, and then I see the lightning, and then I see a couple of drops falling.
Oh no!
And I tell Sturkow, our commander, CJ Sturkow, I'll say, Commander, I think I'm starting to see some rain. And then he piped up on the private line. He says, "You don't see anything, Hernandez." I said, "Roger that." But about 3 or 4 minutes after that, it was just pouring. Mm-hmm. There was lightning. And all I can think of is, I said, "Oh man, my poor family, they're out there outside, watching, and they're probably getting all drenched and all this and stuff." And so the launch gets canceled. So now we got to wait till we get out of egress the ship and then go back to crew quarters. And then I find out that it was only one cloud centered at our launch pad 39 Alpha. The people watching were not getting wet. They just said all of a sudden you couldn't see the shuttle anymore because of the rain. I mean, the cloud just came on there and just drenched, and there was a little bit of lightning. So that's what called it, was the lightning, not the precipitation. And so then that was a Monday. So Wednesday was the new date, and we were getting ready we were in the dressing room. We already had the orange suits, getting ready to walk out when they call it again. And that was due to either a sensor or a faulty fuel valve that was not cooperating. So we said, well, we certainly don't want to take off with, doubting what's wrong with that. So then the third time was the charm. And that's when that was Friday. That's when we finally launched. We all got in there. We were all experts at getting in there now. And so routine. And then we were just saying, hey, let's see if we go this time. And sure enough, we did.
Oh, that's great.
Well, the shuttle certainly had its technical complications. And if I remember correctly, just speaking of rain for a moment, depending on the volume of rain and the altitude at which it occurs, you had to be careful because of the tile system on the shuttle. At a certain point, it's like launching into buckshot, right?
Exactly.
Because of the speeds.
Yes. And so there's a certain amount of precipitation and altitude and all that gets taken into account. But if it's a light rain, it's really not a problem. And if the cloud cover where the rain's being produced is low, then you don't gain that much speed at that low altitude. So you could just rip right through it. The biggest thing is if there's, I think, like lightning within a 20-mile radius that you got to be careful of, that they're more worried about that than anything. And that was the case in ours, in our particular situation that evening.
And Jose, you spent 13 days at the International Space Station and, delivering cargo, science, all that fun stuff. And I'm just wondering what really struck you. Was there stuff that you had wanted to do there? I saw that you had taken pictures of your family at the window there. And as flight engineer, you're a mission specialist there as well with the crew. I think you were on RMS ops, if I remember.
Yeah, I was a robotic. I was one of two. Both Kevin Ford and I, our pilot, and I were the two principal robotic arm operators. I was the portable onboard computer guy specialist. These are computers that help us dock to the International Space Station. We had 7 tons of equipment. We were the second to last mission, I believe, to finish station complete is construction. And we brought 7 tons of equipment in the multi-purpose logistics module Leonardo that we docked, and we emptied the contents both to install both inside and outside of the International Space Station. Outside, we installed camera systems, antennas, and cabling. We got cabling ready for the very last module that was going to be installed. So all they had to do is just connect it and connect the plumbing that was there already that we pre-staged for them. So we did that via several spacewalks. I did not do a spacewalk because I'm the flight engineer. So I take care of the inside. It would be bad form to have the flight engineer outside when something inside goes wrong. So they tend to keep the pilots and the flight engineer inside. And then the mid-deck crew, which is 3 of them, are the ones that really focus on the EVA spacewalks. That's how they break up our training as well. You got 2 groups. You got the flight deck and you got the mid-deck. When we're training ascents, entries, and orbital ops, these guys are training EVA operations in the neutral buoyancy lab. And so that's how we do it. But, even when they do their EVA walks, I was one of the IVA guys, which means I dressed up the people that are going to go outside and make sure everything's working, because that's the only thing that's keeping them alive. And then once they're out there, I use the RMS, the robotic arm, and kind of like their Uber in space. I take them to the to the open bay of the shuttle. They get equipment like ammonia tank assembly units. And then I take them with the robotic arm to the work site. They install it, take them back, and get other things that they need to install. So it was pretty busy 13 days that we were up there in space. 7 tons is a lot of equipment. We even installed the treadmill.
The Colbert treadmill, the Stephen Colbert treadmill. That's right.
Yeah, he wanted a whole module named after him. And we said, no, we're going to name a treadmill after you.
And then he wanted the bathroom named after him, too. So
you guys want all the glory. Hey, let me just a quick follow-up, Tariq. In the late 90s, I think it was, a friend of mine who was working turnaround at Edwards for one of the shuttles that landed out there called me at like 1 a.m. And I answered the phone. I said, dude, what's up? And he said, you need to come out to Edwards right now. And I was like, why do I have... Oh! So he took me on a non-official tour of, I think it was Discovery, which was very cool. But even then, one of the things I noticed was this was not a new machine. This was a machine built in the 70s that was going to fly for 30 plus years. And it was getting old. It was in good shape. I mean, they did everything they could to keep it flight worthy and perfect. But that old original, I think it was a 128K computer where the LED readout was still over on one of the panels as a backup. By the time you flew, Was there a moment where you climbed in that thing, and as wonderful as the experience was, where you thought, wow, I'm flying in the equivalent of a 707 at this point in a way?
Yeah, you think when you think NASA, you think the latest and greatest, but then when you look at flight hardware, it's not the latest and greatest. It's generations old type of technology, because it's so expensive to certify equipment to go up into space. So even remember I said I was the portable onboard computer guy. I mean, we were using those what are they, IBM Think pads,
right?
Pads, yeah.
The original ThinkPad,
big heavy ones, and clunkers, but we were using them because we had a whole lot of them that were certified to go into space, and that's what it would take millions and millions of dollars to certify the next generation. So the easiest thing is you buy a whole lot of them and you keep them, and you just cycle through them. And so it's proven technology. That's the way I looked at it. Rod, is that going to space. If they went to space the first time with this equipment and were successful, then they should be able to go second time. And then they had a proven record. So it didn't worry me, because the physics doesn't change over time. It's the same physics to get out into space. Look at the Russians. They still use Soyuz. It's even older than our stuff, and it's working. And so from that perspective, it wasn't. Yes, do I want them to upgrade and get the latest and greatest? Absolutely. But there's a time and for everything when that happens, when that could happen.
That's awesome. Well, Jose, you mentioned that your life has kind of gone full circle now with your vineyard and your wine and whatnot. And I did want to ask, first of all, please give my best to Adela, because I miss Tierra Luna, the restaurant. Every time I'm back in Houston, there was a night, Rod, where we were all there, the space reporters, me and Irene and Irene Klotz and Robert Perlman. We were having dinner. And Jose, you showed up and you came and you sat down and you had dinner with us while we were there, and it was amazing.
That's pretty cool.
And I have never saw in your blue suit, in your flight.
Oh, there's been times where I've come and I'm not that lucky. I get sent to the back to go and wash dishes. I'm no kidding.
But so I wanted to ask about that circular path, because you left NASA in 2011, the end of the program. You did run for Congress. You've written a lot of books, and now you have a vineyard. And I'm curious how that mainstay of family has kind of been the through line through all of that. What it means to kind of be able to be back and working for in the vineyard, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, first let me tell you, Tariq, why I left. When I came back, shortly after I came back, they announced the retirement of the space shuttle fleet, and I think they only had like 4 or 5 missions left, and but they were all assigned, because they assigned them about 2 years in advance. So I knew I wasn't going to get another mission on the shuttle. Mm-hmm. But that was okay, because, in my previous life, I worked in the nuclear nonproliferation arena, and I traveled to Russia like 25 times, and ya понимаю по-русски язык. So I was one of the first ones in my
show
where they said, hey, we're not going to fly anymore on the shuttle, but we do have an agreement where we're going to fly with the Russians, and American astronauts are going to fly, not as frequent, but you're going to fly on the Russian Soyuz, on the Proton rocket, and do 3 to 6 month stints at the station. And they said, and from your class, you're going to be one of the first ones assigned. You're game for it. And I said, yeah, that's great. So I started going through the medical, everything to get certified for station flight. And then I started to read the fine print. It's almost a 3-year training program. Mm-hmm. And 80% of that time you spend in Russia.
Yeah.
It's a Russian vehicle, which makes sense. And it's not like you can take your family, because you go 12 weeks, come back a week, go 16 weeks, come back 2 weeks, so on and so forth. And then you go out for 6 months, and then you go on the road for 6 months after you come back. So for a period of 4 years, you were probably not going to be at home 85% of the time. Mm-hmm. And I kind of saw what was happening with my colleagues with respect to relationships and marriages dissolving and, problems that occur by being absent. And I also looked at my kids at the time. My 5 kids were from 15 to 7 years old, 5 kids. Yeah. And 15 is the age when you need to have both parents present and you need to start paying attention to your kids. And I thought it would be very unfair for me to put all this burden on Adela. Mm-hmm. And it was the toughest decision I ever made, Tariq, and from a career position point of view, is to, after having tried so many times and finally get selected, is to tell NASA that I was going to be leaving. But I saw no point in sticking around if I couldn't fly.
Yeah,
I felt I would be taking up a billet, an opportunity for someone who has a dream just like I did. And I remember how bad I wanted it. And I said, it's not fair for me to sit on this for 10 years and wait for a U.S. vehicle and then fly again. I think the right thing to do is to step aside and let them hire another person that has that opportunity. And so that's why I decided to leave and came back to California. I ran for Congress, as you mentioned. Thank God I lost. Had I not lost, there's no way I would have been able to pay the tuitions of my 5 kids. Right now I'm at the end of the dark tuition tunnel because I just have one left. He's in his 3rd year of mechanical engineering. But all my kids, I think I made the right decision. My oldest kid, he just graduated 2 months ago from Purdue in aerospace engineering. He has
congratulations,
a PhD, and guess what he wants to be when he grows up? And then I have
a space reporter, right? No.
Yeah. And then I got my 3 girls. I got my 3 girls, and then my son, who's in his needs a couple more years, but all of them in STEM except one of them. Mm-hmm. One of them is a social media influencer, Vanessa Hernandez, and I'll send you on a treasure hunt. If you watch the movie and you see the restaurant scene, there's a girl that asks Michael Pena, "Hey, when are you going up?"
Yeah.
That's my daughter.
No kidding.
Yeah. So she's a big
that's so cool.
She's a big social media influencer. If you want to see me make a fool of myself, go to her TikTok, the Vanessa Hernandez, and I do all kinds of silly things for her because I guess that's what dads do. But yeah, that's and so after that, I opened up when I lost the election. I said, what am I going to do when I grow up? So I opened up Tierra Luna Engineering, aerospace company. And my first gig fell from the sky. Mexico called me and said, we're buying 3 commercial satellites from Boeing, $1.2 billion worth. And we need a technical liaison that can represent us at the meetings and make sure Boeing is doing what we want them to do with our communication satellites. So we launched them in Kazakhstan, we launched them in the French Guiana, and we launched it in Florida, all 3 satellites. And,
wow.
and so that's what helped me get my feet off the ground in my business. And then I got the vineyard. And then I said, well, what's the next challenge? Let me make my own wine. And Tierra Luna Cellars was born. And so that's what
that's amazing.
Well, Jose, our last challenge for you here is something I'm sure you get asked a lot. If you'd like to have a closing statement for young people out there who might be facing their own challenges, and we know that many people are, what would you say?
I would say, do not be afraid to dream big. As long as you're willing to work hard and convert that dream into reality, follow that simple 5-ingredient recipe my father gave me. It's determine your purpose in life. The most important one, make sure you spend time and answer that question. What's your purpose? Then, and then realize how far you are from that purpose, from that goal. Then draw yourself a roadmap so you know how to get there. And then prepare yourself according to the challenge. And then develop a work ethic second to none. And then the 6th and final is never, ever, ever give up on yourselves. Because if you have the tenacity, as the movie says, tenacity is a superpower.
All right. Well, you've really set the stage for me to have a great rest of my day. So thank you. Just being a little selfish here. And I want to thank our audience for joining us today for our conversation with Jose Hernandez, astronomer and other things extraordinaire. So we've seen the movie. I'm now reading the book, which is available on Amazon and other fine booksellers, by the way. where can we keep up with your next chronically overachieving projects?
Well, you could. I have a foundation called astrojh.org. Is the website astrojh.org. It's called Jose Hernandez Reaching for the Stars Foundation. We preach the good gospel of STEM careers, and we're here in the Valley, and we have a summer academy at University of Pacific, both campus in Stockton and Sacramento. Hopefully we'll expand to the San Francisco campus as well, where we have 7th through 12th graders spend 5 weeks on the campus, and we explore them. We expose them to great careers in STEM, have Silicon Valley companies come over, give them talks. And then we also prepare them for next year's core curriculum in math and science. And so if you look in that website, you'll see what I'm up to. My own website, tiralunaengineering.com. There's a store there. If you want the books autographed, that's where you order them from.
Okay.
Although, disclaimer, they're cheaper on Amazon,
Right.
but they won't be autographed. But the proceeds from this one, from engineering, goes to our astrojh.org, our foundation. So it goes for a worthy cause. And they're $30 a piece. So there's not that they're that expensive. But we do that. And then, of course, you want wine, it's out of this world. The best, I can guarantee this, I can make this claim, it's the best wine made by an astronaut.
I love it.
Probably the only wine made by an astronaut. And if there's any other astronauts, I'll challenge them to a taste test. But I'm making the claim that it's the best wine made by an astronaut. You want to order it, tierralunascellars.com, and it arrives directly at your doorstep in most states, not all states. Got to make
All
that.
right. And you heard it here first. Tariq, where can we track your only slightly less impressive feats these days, including the history of your time in band?
Ouch.
well,
Only slightly.
You can find me at space.com as always. I'm back at it from vacation next week.
All right.
And then on the Twitters at Tariq J Malik again. And if you like video games, I got a whole thing about Star Trek and Fortnite coming up at Spacetron Plays on YouTube. So it's going to be very exciting.
I can't believe you snuck that in every week.
Star Trek. It was so exciting.
Yeah. And you can always find me, of course, at pylebooks.com and at astromagazine.com. Don't forget to drop us a line at twis@twit.tv. That's TWIS at twit.tv. We always welcome your comments, suggestions, ideas, and please send a joke. We get all this fan mail, but you guys forget to send your space jokes in. So don't forget to do that. And we love answering all our fan mail, and we answer each and every one. Don't forget to check out space.com. The website's the name. And, of course, the National Space Society at nss.org. Both are good places to satisfy your spaceflight cravings. New episodes published every Friday of this podcast on your favorite podcatcher. So make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and give us reviews, thumbs up, ring a bell, whatever you got to do. You can also head to our website at twit.tv/twis, TWIS. Finally, don't forget you can get all the great programming from the TWiT network ad-free on Club TWiT, as well as some extras that you can only get there for just $7 a month. And come on, that's cheaper than a movie ticket. You can also follow the TWiT Tech Podcast Network at TWiT on Twitter and on Facebook, and twit.tv on Instagram. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jose. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Come join us on This Week in Enterprise Tech. Expert co-host and I talk about the enterprise world, and we're joined by industry professionals and trailblazers like CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, every acronym role, plus IT pros and marketeers. And we talk about technology, software plus services, security, you name it, everything under the sun. You know what? I learn something each and every week, and I bet you will too. So definitely join us. And of course, check out the twit.tv website and click on This Week in Enterprise Tech to subscribe today.